Hi there, and welcome to my tutorial for the Wyrd Hunter in Tainted Grail Conquest. I'm Icon, and we're going to cover up this character class. I'm going to talk about the base gameplay mechanic. I'm going to talk about pros and cons of this class, which kind of cards you might want to draft, and which kind of perks you might want to have. I'm also going to talk a bit about how to handle this character to make him successful, and last but not least, I'm going to go over the equipment and follow up with a certain summary. So we're going to get started with the character class's unique perks first. The Wyrd Hunter is the definition of a burst damage dealer. The ultimate reflects that. The ultimate ability is just a free attack, which grows stronger the more charges it has, and you gain charges by inflicting damage. Wonderful synergy. So our passive is the Hunter Marks, which deals vulnerability onto an enemy as soon as we have hit them 4 times. The marks persist between turns. The vulnerability only lasts for the remainder of the turn. This makes this skill quite timing intense, and this is the first little challenge you have to master with this character class. It's really powerful because vulnerability doubles the amount of damage a target receives, which makes it really, really powerful. But at the same time, it can be quite finicky to apply it just at the right moment. So, let's check out the deck of the Wyrd Hunter. I'm going to go over the attacks first. Basic attacks are clear. We have small strikes, dealing 3 hits per 50% for 50% of damage to random enemies. This is really awesome in synergy to the ultimate, which charges up whenever we inflict damage, and therefore the small strike skill is always worth 3 charges of your ultimate, compared to the attack, which is only 1 charge on your ultimate. So this is how this card has a pretty nice synergy with the Wyrd Hunter. It has a bad synergy, though, in combination to the Hunter Mox, because, well, you don't know where he will put your blows, so the Hunter Mox will be scattered randomly. But at the beginning of a fight, this is most of the time really good. The third attack we have is the Overhead Swing. Again, only 50% damage, but it reduces the enemy's armor by 10 until the end of the combat. A really powerful thing to soften up the enemies for that big juicy blow, because the less armor they have, the harder you hit. So basically this is an attack and a damage amplifier at the same time. With only 50% damage applied, though, it's a rather weak attack, but believe me when I say the armor reduction is definitely worth it. For the stances, we got 3 blocks, which just negates the next incoming attack, 1 stun, pretty costly, but a directly aimed stun to an enemy, also pretty useful, and last but not least, the Broad Reach. This is the one card the Wyrd Hunter draws every turn, no matter what, and this stance increases the damage of your next hit by 100%. That's really good in synergy with the ultimate alone, because this gets buffed up as well, and synergizes really good with a lot of other moves of the Wyrd Hunter in general. What I want to say right away here is keep in mind that this card, it doesn't expire. This buff is conserved until you strike the next time. So if you ever end your turn with energy left, you can just cast a Broad Reach even if you don't want to attack this turn anymore, because the damage buff will just get carried over into the next turn. So let's get outside and smack something. In my personal experience, the Wyrd Hunter is the weakest at the beginning, and he scales progressively to really, really amazing proportions. The standard procedure is try to block as many attacks of your enemy as possible, and then we're going to go for the small strikes. And I'm going to apply a Broad Reach this turn, instead of attacking one more time. I could go for the Overhead Swing here, but then my Hunter Mox would reach 4, and I would apply a vulnerability without the ability to deal more damage on top of that. Not what I want. So instead, I buff up my attack for the next turn. The block is online, so this guy is not able to wound me. There we go. So next round goes the same way. I'm not going to play the block right away because I see a decent chance of one-shotting this guy right now. So Tainted Force here, popping up, armor reduction. This is more damage for my enemy. Let's apply one small strikes again. And watch what's happening here. We have not only the vulnerability, but there's also new hunter marks already accumulating. So basically, once the enemy is marked as vulnerable, you can stack up the next hunter mark again. So this is quite valuable to know. Okay, this guy, he's dead. We don't need to do anything beyond that, be it the ultimate or the regular attack. Okay, so when we're leveling up, let's take a look at the cards. Due to the fact that the Wyrd Hunter is a burst character class, he's a little bit weird to draft. Stuff like the Double Strike, for example, deal 2 hits for 100% damage is really appealing to me, because you get a lot of effects later down the road, which also amplify your damage in general. What I personally love the most are singular attacks with a very high percentile modificator. Like attacks that deal 200 or 300% damage, because combine that with your broad reach and you really deal insane amounts of damage. Things you need for the Wyrd Hunter in general are methods to kill enemies really quickly, and methods to increase your blocks effectively, and methods to manage your energy efficiently. These three things are the pillars of your build. Here, I wouldn't take any of those because none of these is really going how I want it to be. I mean, we could go for the devastating attack, but let's re-roll one more time. Here we go. Stunning Shout, that's one of my favorites. You also need to get new stun methods, because the stun card here, for one, you only have one of them, and this thing costs friggin' 2 energy. This is really costly. Stunning Shout just stuns all enemies with no or negative armor, and since you have an armor reducer, this is a very powerful card. I really can't recommend it enough, because there's also a rune which decreases the enemy's armor when you have it slotted into your weapon. In combination with that, you have a cheap AoE stun, and it's really powerful. So summarizing it again, go for strong attacks, because you really need something to combine with that broad reach to one-shot people. Go for methods to block, because you really need better blocks. Those block cards you start with are utter crap. And try to get more stuns and stuff to make cards cheaper, draw new cards. This is very important, because a lot of the things you do as a Wyrd Hunter are pretty costly. I mean, let alone using a broad reach and firing a heavy attack afterwards is quickly depleting all your 3 energy in one turn. So stuff that reduces your energy is really good. Okay, over to the perks. Perk-wise, well, you see there's stuff like giving you new cards, giving you new blocks. My personal favorites among the perks of the Wyrd Hunter were stuff where I was able to get more armor per attack, or in general. There's one perk which gives you armor per strike you land, which is insanely powerful, because high armor is really good whenever you can't block everything, and you won't be able to block everything. And another thing that I really find very valuable in the perk tree is everything which increases your damage or increases your energy management. I personally would weigh it as following. Go for energy management things first, or utility stuff like new card draw and energy reduction is, in my opinion, even the most important thing. Almost on par with defensive things like giving you more armor or healing you after combat. Healing is invaluable. And lastly, pump up your damage. So we're going to go for the 1000 cuts here, because I really like that. We can get a free card which with reduced costs, and hey, yeah, Stand Rune, reducing armor of all enemies. So since I'm going to do another demonstration fight here, we're going to socket that Stand Rune in, because this is exactly the combo I was talking about. And it's a really, really good one. Because whatever you might do with this character class, you will need methods to disable your enemies when you really need it to. The Weird Hunter is really good at dealing at taking out single targets in no time. This is the real big secret power of this class. So here we're going to use our first move to now stun everybody, and then we do what we did before, applying small strikes as often as I can. Whenever I can apply small strikes as an opener or multi-hit things as an opener, I really like to do this. Here I don't want to reduce the enemy's attacks because, well, the secondary effect, reducing the cost of 2 random cards by 2 the next turn, this is exactly what I want. Your biggest problem with the Weird Hunter is that you only have Brigand 3 energy per turn. So what you want to do is you want to try to get as many cost reductions as possible going to play as many cards as possible, because this is so very, very important. So now this guy is vulnerable, and we see there's not much he can do against us. Since I want to finish him off quite quickly, I'm going to use the Broad Reach. And if you mouse over now here, you see I deal 48 to 67 damage. The armor reduction plus the vulnerability is dealing tremendous amounts of damage. Now 1 free block, followed by overhead swing, because whenever I'm applying hunter marks, basically, I like to do things that have utility effects, or just if that's only gathering more stacks for my ultimate, just like with these small strikes. And whenever my enemy is actually vulnerable, I want to dish out the big guns. So in this scenario, as you see here, I only have those weak overhead swing cards. So instead I go into Broad Reach and use my ultimate skill on this guy, dealing 72 to 100 damage, taking out that enemy immediately. And this is basically your gameplay loop for the Weird Hunter. I made the experience that the more perks and cards I collected with this class, the easier it was. The hardest time was always, literally always, the phase when I was between level 1 and 5. Most of my runs failed during the early phase with the Weird Hunter. It's literally a go big or go home character class, because once you are over that over that hump at the beginning, and you have accumulated a few effects which make your cards cheaper when you do something, when you get these abilities which give you new cards when something dies, or new energy when something dies, or whatever. All these synergies which make your cards cheaper and give you new cards for free are the lifeblood of the Weird Hunter. As soon as you have that going, focus into defenses. Well, okay, you should and that's the real downside, and here we come to the downsides of this character class. Basically, you have to focus on utility and defense at the same time. And damage, actually, because your basic deck is crap in terms of damage dealing. Only your ultimate is really powerful. And all that puzzled together makes the Weird Hunter to the most challenging class of the fighters. But as soon as you have a few puzzle pieces together, like 3 or 4 perks that work really well together, a few cards, like let's say, the Stunning Shout is really a powerful asset already. Stunning Shout, plus a couple of really good defensive cards, plus a couple of utility things, and, well, sooner or later you will find yourself destroying enemies, entire enemy teams in turn 1. Happened. And it's quite easy to pull off as soon as you have found the necessary puzzle pieces. So, in that regard, the Weird Hunter is very, very dependent on luck with cards and perks, but once you get that, holy moly. Was the most powerful and destructive character class I've played so far in this game, in terms of amounts of damage in a short period of time. Because the fact that here you double your damage, Here with the hunter marks you double your damage. Here you can get up to 20 charges, giving you 500% damage plus at the end of the day, which turns into, you know, there's so many damage multiplicators on this character class that it's really no problem to deal damage numbers in the 4-digit area. Possible. And it's a lot of fun. But it's also really, really unnerving that this character class tends to crash and burn like that. Alright, see you guys at the equipment screen, because there's literally not much more than I can say about the gameplay here. Now then,
The blacksmith.
at the rune store, we check out the beginner's runestones. So the Wyrd Hunter has a few things going on for himself which make the rune decisions a little bit different than I was used to. For example, I want to feature the Gar rune first. In the armor slot, it lets you deal 1 hit for 5 damage to all enemies. This is awesome, because this is free ultimate charges. You literally get a free charge per turn for every enemy on the field at the end of your turn, and I really was surprised how powerful that was in the long run. Can't emphasize it enough how useful this is. For the armor slot above that, well, I'm a big fan of increasing my armor. If you don't have any effects which let you pump up your armor effectively, this is really, really good to go. I personally also love the tier rune on the armor slot, because due to the burst nature of the Wyrd Hunter, you really benefit a ton from very high bonuses during the first few turns. So 75 armor in the first turn of combat translates into, I am able to use most of my energy for dealing damage because you guys won't hurt me too much. Really powerful stuff. And last but not least, I want to mention the Calc rune for the armor, because healing HP after every one combat is also very appealing. So you see, there's way too many interesting runes for the armor slot. I personally think the Gar rune is my personal favorite, because unlike other classes, the Wyrd Hunter is not good at stalling fights. He wants to get the fight done as quick as possible, preferably in the first turn. And this ultimate of the Wyrd Hunter is really, really powerful. 3 charges for that, awesome stuff. So let's get to the weapon slot. At the weapon slot, well, the Stan rune is invaluable. The armor reduction is not only good when you have the stunning shout in your deck, like I mentioned before. It's also a free damage amplifier against each and every enemy. Also, it softens up armored enemies. There's really literally nothing bad about that to mention. Of course, Gar with the flat damage increase is not bad either. As with every character class that features a ton of percentile damage bonuses, increasing your baseline damage is always a good thing. Ethel, I don't like this one too much because the percentile bonus is not too high, and I prefer much more, if I want to go for different runes here, Tier and Calc. Tier increasing the damage flat, the entire damage during my first turn of combat, or giving me additional cost-reduced cards is also extremely valuable. Both of them are really appealing, and the problem I have with the Wyrd Hunter is always that there are way more appealing opportunities than I have slots. So overall, choose whatever feels good for you. I think you are doing nothing wrong if you prefer the defensive runes for healing yourself after combat or increasing your armor. There's nothing wrong with that. Just keep in mind the armor reduction rune is insanely powerful because it gives you, like I'm showcased there, a AoE party-wide stun for 1 energy. This is, in my opinion, even too strong at any point of the game, but it is there. You might want to use it. So to summarize the Wyrd Hunter here. The Wyrd Hunter is the burst class in the game. There's nobody who can burst harder and faster than this guy. He excels at fighting single enemies that deal a lot of damage with single blows. Because of the block mechanic, he can intercept that damage really, really easy. His biggest problem are really large crowds of enemies with multi-staged attacks, like 3 times low amounts of damage because block is really weak against those. And since the damage dealing concept of the Wyrd Hunter excels at single target damage, widespread fights are a little bit of a problem. Therefore, to avoid that, stack up on AoE attacks as well. I didn't mention that before well enough. I want to talk about that one more time. AoE attacks are really important to pick up. And now let's get to the cons of that character class. He's very card and perk dependent. Your runs can crash and burn entirely because you're just unlucky. The more experienced you grow with this character class, the more you know which pieces fit together and which is less risk to pick than other things. But overall, to my personal experience, the Wyrd Hunter was one of the most difficult classes to pick up, and it did cost me a lot of time to actually wrap my head around it, how I was playing really successfully with that. If you are struggling with that, keep in mind, healing is really powerful. Just buy a lot of health pots, use runes for that. Also, at level 10, you can pick a perk which lets you heal for a portion of your health for every enemy you kill with your ultimate. There's also a perk which allows you to heal for a portion of your health after a combat. There's options. Use them, because the Wyrd Hunter is not able to block away all the incoming damage. The kit is not meant to do that. You will have to suffer blows. It's up to you to calculate it strategically to not die during that. Overall, I had a lot of fun once I mastered the Wyrd Hunter, and I had a lot of frustration until I got there. So if you are at the frustration stage right now, just keep going, and I hope this video was somewhat helpful for you to give you a few ideas what to try out to make your life easier. So what I really found extremely helpful on top of that was visiting the seamstress. You can go for a upgrade at hers where you can get passive skills at random. This is a increasingly costly thing. The first one is $400 and then the costs increase. But since passive skills and perks are so important for this character class, seamstress can provide. Also grind those areas empty. Experience makes you more powerful. This is more true for the Wyrd Hunter than for other classes. But as soon as you grow more experience, this does wear off. When you learn to combo more precisely, you will discover that the damage potential of this character class is pretty high, even from the get-go. Okay, so I hope that was kind of helpful for you. Feel free to drop me a comment down below. If you feel like I missed out anything really important, just add it down there. If there are any questions, just ask away. I'll do my best to answer them. Leave a thumbs up on that video if you liked it, to make it more visible to other people. And of course, if you like my work and my channel, just subscribe. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of my daily content. Beyond that, description box down there has my Twitch profile where you can see me streaming daily, so you might want to check that out. And last but not least, there's also support links, Patreon, Coffee, whatever might scratch your itch. I'd be more than happy if you check those out, but don't you worry if you don't. Watching that video here meant already a ton to me. Have a nice day, and have fun with the Wyrd Hunter. See you soon.